Planning Board, May 22, 2025, 6:30 p.m. Please stand and address the flag. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, it is hereby announced and shall be entered into the minutes of this meeting that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the following: posted on the bulletin board of the office of the Township Clerk, posted on the bulletin boards within the municipal complex, printed in the Home News Tribune and Cranberry Press on December 27, 2024, posted on the Monroe Township website, and sent to those individuals who have requested personal notice. Laura, call the roll.
Mr. Rothman? Ms. Brodsky? Here. Mr. Manesh Patel?
Here.
Ms. Damiani? Mr. Slavacek?
Here.
Mr. Weiner?
Here.
Dr. Kenzie? Councilwoman Cohen?
Yes.
Mayor's representative, Mr. Patel? Chairman Gaffrey?
Here. Okay, Laura circulated the minutes, I believe, at the end of last week. I assume everybody's had the chance to take a look at it. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
I move to adopt the minutes.
A second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, the minutes are adopted. And we're going to go right into the applications. The first one is PB 1267-25, solar photovoltaic system arrays and associated improvements to be constructed at the following locations. And council, please come forward. And just to note, this is a courtesy review. There's not going to be a vote on this.
Members of the board, chairman, board professionals, good evening. My name is Rob Simon. I'm with the firm of Herald Law. I'm here on behalf of the Monroe Township School District and HESP Solar, here to proudly present a courtesy review project, a solar project with regard to installations at various school district facilities: Monroe Township High School, Monroe Township Middle School, Applegarth Elementary, Woodland Elementary, Barclay Brook Elementary, Oak Tree Elementary, Administration Building, and Transportation Building. And as you'll hear from our witness, these installations vary in type. Many of them are just roof installations. There is one canopy installation and two ground mount installations. As the chairman appropriately stated, this is a courtesy review application where we are required by the municipal land use law to seek review and recommendation of the planning board in conjunction with the municipal master plan as set forth in section 31A of the municipal land use law, and is also parroted in your ordinance at section 175-14G. The master plan that you have actually is replete with references to encouraging energy efficient design and sustainable business practices, and to incorporate solar panels into future projects, and to promote the use of renewable sources and becoming a sustainable town with renewable energy from solar sources. So with that, the school district has entered into a solar energy services agreement with HES Solar to construct the solar system project at the various locations that I identified. Solar energy facilities or structures are considered as inherently beneficial uses under the municipal land use law and as accessory uses to the school district buildings. And this project is also part of New Jersey's Energy Savings Improvement Program, or the ESIP program, that allows government entities such as school districts to make energy-related improvements to their facilities to not only reduce energy usage and generate corresponding energy savings, but also use the savings to help afford equipment upgrades to government facilities, including at public schools. So that's what's doing here tonight. The way we're going to proceed is we just really have one witness, Rob Michelle from Gladstone Design, the project civil engineer, who's going to walk through the various projects. Also available this evening, although I think she's maybe running a few minutes late, is Susan Brody, the Chief Operations Officer of HESP Solar. And we also have Jerry Take on behalf of the Monroe Township School District if there's any questions. So with that, I'd like to present Mr. Michello.
Just have to turn it on.
So Rob, even though it's a courtesy review.
Yeah, when I swear him in. That way we'll keep everybody happy.
Exactly.
Do you swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you could just state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address for the record.
For the record, my name is Robert Moschello. That's spelled Moschello. My business address is 265 Main Street, Gladstone, New Jersey.
And just give us your credentials, too.
I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I received my license in 2004. I got my BS in civil engineering in 1998 from NJIT. I've appeared before over 100 boards in the state of New Jersey as an expert witness in the field of civil engineering for both land development, commercial, residential, and my office has actually worked on over a gigawatt worth of solar throughout the state of New Jersey over the last 10 years.
Thank you.
Thank
Accepted.
you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so I have just a couple of exhibits I'm going to go through this evening for the board. We had submitted a package of different plans for the individual schools. I just have some aerials of each of those I'm going to put up here on the easel.
Do you want these, how do you want these marked, or, I mean, we've submitted plans for each one of these facilities. It's up to you if you want these.
If they're different, why don't we just call them Exhibit A1,
Yeah.
A2?
I'll just mark them for
Yeah,
the record,
yeah.
just so
way
that
they know what
they
they
have
are.
them. So this,
Rob, just identify which school district corresponds to these.
yeah, so I'll go through each of them. So this is Exhibit A1. It's entitled Aerial Exhibit. It's for the Monroe Township High School, and it's dated May 22nd, 2025. And what we're looking at here is the high school layout. So when you look at the plan, Paranonville Road is on the west side here. The municipal building, we're right across the street from the high school. And this is Schoolhouse Road on the bottom of the plan here on the south side of the plan. And basically what you're looking at is, for this particular project, this one's going to be a solar canopy system over the existing parking lots on the school campus. So we're looking at 6 different solar canopies that we're proposing here. Generally speaking, they're actually a little larger than your typical solar canopies, which might just be over one row of parking. These are going to have over multiple rows of parking because of the layout of the high school. They're going to vary anywhere from 22 feet up to 28 feet in height because of the span that we're doing here. We want to have a 14-foot clear span underneath the panels for emergency service vehicles and the like. So this way we're doing a double row of panels over the parking. So you're going to be a little bit higher than your typical parking lot, which might be in the 20 to 22 foot range. These will be between 22 and 28, depending on the width of them. We're looking at basically on this layout here, it's almost a 3.5 megawatt system for the school. The final design may vary a little bit in size depending on final foundation layouts and the like, based on how we deal with some of the on-ground improvements. But the basic layout is as you see here with the panels, and we'll have conduits will be run back to the school building for power. We are going to have to take down the pole-mounted lights that are in the parking lot now, and we'll replace those with lighting underneath the solar panels. It'll make sure it complies with your ordinances for lighting levels, but we do have to take those down. And there are a couple trees along Schoolhouse Road that will actually be impacted by this as well, and they'll have to come down also because of shading purposes and the constructability of the panels on the, I'll say, the southeast side of the facility. So that's the high school that we have. I'll go on to the next one.
Just a quick question. How many parking spots are going to be eliminated?
The way we have it designed right now, we're not proposing the elimination of any spaces. We do have to work out the foundations to make sure that they land on the striping or actually behind in the islands. The idea is to make sure that we don't take out any parking just because of, it's a school and I'm sure every space is important. So we make sure we don't do that. But yeah, the idea is to set the foundations where they're either in an island or lined up with the striping so that this way you don't lose a parking space. Overall, the impervious coverage impact on this is negligible. Most of this is in impervious spaces already, so it's really going to be negligible impact from a stormwater perspective for impervious coverage because of the foundations.
And under the municipal land use law, the solar panels are excluded from any type of impervious calculation.
That's correct. So the next one that I'm going to go to is the Applegarth Elementary School.
So this is going to be A2, Mr. Michelle?
A2 for the record. It's A2 for the record. Also dated 5/22/25. So this is a section of the Applegarth Elementary School property. We're proposing a ground-mounted system for the elementary school. This one is actually going to be approximately 700 kilowatts, so 0.7 megawatts in size. It's a ground mount system, so this is going to be set up with 2 panels, what I'll call in landscape, actually portrait, that are laid out in 5 rows. They'll be supported by a pile-driven column that'll be driven into the ground. In terms of impervious coverage for this, because we're using pile-driven posts to support it, it's almost negligible. It's about 30, 40 square foot of impervious coverage for the pile itself, for the foundation, but the panels themselves, as Mr. Simon pointed out, are not impervious under the municipal land use law. The height of this system is typically anywhere between 7 and 9 feet, based on the angle of the panels as they're supported. You need to have about 2.5, 3 feet of clearance on the trailing, on the front edge, and about 8 to 9 feet of clearance on the back edge. It is going to be fenced in. It'll have a 7-foot high fence around it to separate the system from any activities that go on the property itself. And that's basically, there'll be a conduit run from the system back into the school for power purposes. There's no removal of any trees or vegetation or impact to any of the parking or anything on the site since it sits in a grass field area.
Talk about lighting.
Yeah, there's no lighting proposed for this. There's no impact to that in any way, shape, or form. The next one we have is for the Oak Tree Elementary School.
And
this will be A3.
This will be A3?
Yes, dated 5/22/25 for the record. This is an even smaller system than the one you just saw a moment ago for ground mounted. Again, this is going to be in the field area to the west of the existing ball field, so we're not going to be impacting the ball field that's there now. This system's actually less than 0.2 megawatts, so it's really small in terms of size. But again, same parameters, same height, 7 to 9 feet, same fence around it, conduit being run back to the building. Again, no impact to lighting, landscaping, or anything on the property other than the area we're taking up for the panels itself. And then the last board I have here, we'll call this A4 for the record. And this is entitled Rooftop Solar Layout Plans, dated 5/22/25. And this basically shows the 4 different facilities where they're doing panels on the roofs of the buildings. There's no parking lot or ground-mounted proposed here. One is for the Monroe Township Middle School. The other one is for the Barclay Brook Elementary School. Then you have the Woodland Elementary School, and then you have the Administration and Transportation Building as well. So some of these roofs are flat. Some of them have peaks to them. In any event, they're all going to be on the roof. So typically, for the flat roofs, they will not be visible from the ground level. The peaked roof, of course, you'll see the panels on that one, but there's no proposed removal of any trees, vegetation, parking spaces, or things of that nature with these plans. That concludes my direct presentation.
Thank you.
So open it up for any questions from Mr. Michello with regard to any of the projects.
Do any of our professionals have any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. What determines the size of the arrays at each location? Like you had a very small one at Oak Tree and a much larger one at across the street at Applegarth.
I'll say it typically has to do with the power consumption of the schools and the buildings, but maybe Ms. Brody might be able to answer that question in a little more detail because they dealt with that when the RFP was put out for the power determination for each of the schools.
And will the energy generated from these solar panels, are these going to power the school?
Yeah, these are what we call net zero installations. So we can't generate more power than what the school uses in a given year. So it basically goes back into the grid and makes the meter spin backwards. So if they're using a certain amount of power during the day, if the panels are generating more power than the school is using, well, that power goes back into the electrical grid and the meter goes in reverse. So at the end of the year, they're supposed to basically have a net zero impact to the electric bills for the school.
So essentially they're sized to handle all the power that the school?
They're usually sized to be slightly less than the full amount. You don't size them to 100% because you have fluctuations. So they're typically in the 90% range. But Ms. Brody may be able to answer that a little bit more accurately because they do the electrical calculations as part of the power purchase agreement they put together.
Okay, I have some other questions regarding the panels that are on the roofs of the schools and transportation. How will you get access to those panels if there's a problem? And I'm assuming it's the electric company or that has to come out and maintain these. How will they get it in there during school or even in the middle of the night? Would they come out for?
It's actually HESP who's responsible for the maintenance since they're installing the system. So they would have an agreement with the school district to access the system and be able to maintain it. So they would have to work with them to get to the various facilities.
And will
if
there
there's
be
a problem.
ground-mounted equipment for the roof panels?
The roof panels typically no. For the parking lot and for the ground mount systems, there will be a small utility pad closer to the building that they'll need for a transformer and things of that nature. On the parking lot ones, they typically put the inverters on the support system itself, and then there's usually a transformer close to the building.
Okay. I have more questions on the parking lot mounted solar. So with regard to the high school, you said site lighting is all going to be removed. So a concern is the site lighting outside of these areas where there was a pole-mounted light that covered the area that's beyond these solar panels. So you're going to be providing a site plan of sort that shows all the lighting levels. How will that be accomplished?
Well, let me just back up on that for one moment. The only lighting that we're going to remove on the high school will be the lights that are that are in the islands where the panels are going. If anywhere outside of the panels, those lights are going to remain. So we're not changing those. So it's only going to be where we're putting the panels in is where we're going to install lights under the panels.
So there'll still be ample light beyond these solar panels from the existing light? Because it appeared that some of the lighting you were removing may impact some of the sidewalk areas closer to the school, like across the aisle from the school.
Correct. If we're going to be removing a light pole that's, let's say, in this row of parking here underneath the panels, we're going to make sure that we provide enough adequate lighting to reach the same level that pole reached under existing conditions. Because,
Perfect.
yeah, you're right. If the poles are a certain height, they do have that throw, and we want to cover that.
Yep.
So if we have
Okay.
to put a light on the end of the panel to angle that way, we will do that. And we're going to look at that as part of the final design we do for the building permit.
Thank you. The other thing on the high school, the access aisles, you have like the entrance coming in off a schoolhouse, but you have the solar panels overhanging that drive aisle. So my concern is school buses, fire equipment coming in or out of there. It's really on the egress side where the panels overhang the drive aisles. And then also the one at the top of the page, the drive aisle there, to your left, I'm sorry, upper left. That one's over that main drive aisle. So again, just a concern with the drive aisles, if fire equipment's going to be able to get it, through there, and school buses.
Yeah, they're designed to have a minimum of 14-foot clear, and because of the size of these panels, we're double spanning. They're typically between 14 and 18-foot clear on the bottom side. So your 14 is your max for traveling on road. So
So I know it's here for a courtesy review, but I would just ask that you run that by our fire department.
we
and
would be happy to do that. Yeah.
Typically for these projects, we'll run it always by the municipal fire department as well as, and I was holding off for a second, your question about accessing the roofs for the panels, we coordinate that with the fire company as well.
So if you have to get in
terms
there,
of access.
so they don't come out for maintenance in the middle of the night or whenever they come out for maintenance, if the school's open, how are they getting access? Is there a ladder on the side of the building to get up, or is it inside, or?
It's something that's usually worked out on a building by building basis.
So you'll work that out. Okay, and
if there's
coordinate with fire. Okay.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, if there's a couple panels where we'll make some adjustments when we go into final structural design, if we have to shift them over a little bit just for ease of clearance around some of these corners, we'll be happy to do that.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'll go to the Applegart School, the ground-mounted one. You're removing a cricket field
So this is on A2.
and
Yes,
some
on A2.
recreation areas out there, it looks like. school expansion? You know, why would this be going out in the field where, instead of on the building?
I'll have to defer to Ms. Brody on that one because they had, or the RFP had listed where to put these facilities on the property. So it is going over a field, and looks like there's an old, not an old, but some softball fencing there
And
as
I know
well.
this came through the Board of Ed, so they have no plans to expand or put a building
and
over
we can
there?
have, Mr. Take, respond to that question if you would.
Okay.
Anybody from the board?
I actually have two questions.
Mic on.
Hopefully they're
Can you hit your mic?
If not, maybe we can have the appropriate person,
There you go.
the appropriate person, let's see.
There you go. Okay, there we go. If it's not for you, then maybe we can get the appropriate person. So the first question is, just to make sure we understand, you've used a conclusive term a few times before in referencing net zero. Can you explain what's meant by that? Is it going to be zero cost now for electricity for the school district because of this? Or is there going to be a net zero change from what the cost is now? Or does it mean something else?
When I refer to net zero from an electrical standpoint, and I'll Ms. Brody talk about it from a cost standpoint, but net zero from an electrical standpoint is you're generating almost enough electricity where you're not putting it back into the grid. So that's net zero. You're not using more than you're taking. You're not using less than you're taking. You're basically supposed to balance out your power generation over the 12 months, and that's why they say net zero in terms of use.
So the power use is what's netting at zero, but as far as the cost to the district and for electricity, as between what it would cost for electrical power, conventional as exists now, versus what the costs are going to be by implementing this system, the savings. So
Mr. Weiner, I think that's really a
okay,
question.
And Susan will be able to answer that one.
I'll wait till we hear that.
Yeah.
And my other question was, has this been reviewed and evaluated by the police department of public safety? Because my concern that comes up to me is particularly by the high school, where these are elevated above parking areas, is obviously there's the potential for obscuring vision for security purposes in a great majority of the parking area. And we're talking about a school where there are students, not everyone drives, even some that do, as well as employees and so forth. And my concern is particularly activities that happen later in the day, in off-season, winter, fall, when the sun sets earlier. How is that impacting the visual ability for security to make sure that it remains as safe as it is now? So does part of the plan include any type of cameras to be integrated in underneath the panels, or what is the I guess the perspective on that for safety, for security, as well as if our police department and school security have chimed in?
I will say to one part of that, and then I'll defer to the other part to Ms. Brody, is these are typically a little bit higher than your typical panels you might see. Typically, you'll have a panel that'll just be over a portion of the parking lot, but because this one's spanning, go back to the high school, because this is spanning multiple parking spaces, you have a higher clearance underneath. So that actually helps in terms of visibility under the panel.
From ground level, but
Right.
what about, like, say, from above? If there's, I don't know where they are or what, but if school security has cameras and they're elevated at the top of the building or higher up, they may not be able to angle to get underneath, and then they're being obscured.
Usually what we see when we do installations like this is HESP will work with the schools and their security, and we've done these on other facilities where they have to put new cameras in underneath the canopies to make up for maybe what they might have had on the building. So that's something that HESP could talk about a little bit in more detail, but we
As
usually...
to whether there are going to be cameras, and I guess my other question is whether or not this has been reviewed by the public safety department in the town.
Yeah, we'll check on that. I don't believe this has yet, but we can certainly, like we did with the fire department, we can also go to them too and review it with them as well.
It's a typical, before we get building permits, we talk to the police department, we talk to the fire department, just to make sure that they have no issues with existing versus proposed conditions.
No, I understand that, and I realize this is a courtesy review, but concerns of safety, whether it's a courtesy review or an actioned application, it's the same concerns. And
Appropriate comment, absolutely.
often, if this were an application where the board is taking action, that either it would be reviewed or that may very well sometimes be a condition of approval to get that. So that's why I'm just asking if this has been done yet. Has it been evaluated from that standpoint or not?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Excuse me, are these panels going up on stanchions or are they just one big one? And how much room do you leave between each parking spot?
So the way they're designed typically is there's columns that support them.
Right,
The columns are
okay.
typically spaced anywhere between 27 to 36 feet. They try to keep them even with the width of parking spaces. Parking space is typically 9 foot wide, so you'll have 27 foot for 3 or 36 for 4 parking spaces. So you have a column every so many number of spaces, and then that column goes up, and then there's a steel structure on top that supports all the solar panels. So if you're looking at it from underneath, you would just see columns that would be supporting it, X amount of feet apart from each other, and then spanning the width of the parking lot. So you're not going
How much room do you leave for when the cars pull into their parking?
Typically, where we locate them is either at the head of the parking space at the very top by the curb, or in the island behind it, so that it's not impacting anybody opening up a door. It's not going to be in a place where you pull into the space and the column is right here when I open my door. It's not designed that way.
Chairman, I just got 3 more questions. Regarding the Applegarth and the oak tree with the ground arrays, buffering for the glare from these panels. Like to see some buffering from the road if there's glare heading towards Applegarth Road or the residents.
Usually when they're ground mounted like this and you're on a pretty flat site, glare usually isn't an issue because of the way the sun's coming down. Even when it's setting in the evening, it's usually minimal. It's when you're from a further distance away and you're up on a higher elevation looking down at the facility, you'll get some glare. And if you're going to get it, it's only going to be for a few minutes in the morning or the evening hours at most. But in this case, because everything is relatively flat here, glare usually isn't an issue.
So it shouldn't be an issue?
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing, you're going to be providing access roads to get to those panels on Oak Tree and Applegarth?
There's no roads proposed because the only typical maintenance for these is once it's built, the typical maintenance is mowing the lawn to keep the grass height down to a reasonable limit so it doesn't start growing up to the bottom of the panels. That's why they're about 2.5 foot high off the ground to start. And then if they need to access them for maintenance, they'll bring a truck and drive on the grass to get there. But they don't usually go out unless there's a problem.
And they'll access through the school lot, or will they be putting a new driveway?
No, they'll access through the school lot on the grass. Yeah, there's no reason to put any stabilized turf or pavement or anything like that.
Great. The last question is the fence that's provided around there. Typically, we're a 6 foot high fence in that zoning. You have a 7 foot fence. What's the reasoning to go?
7 foot fencing is because of the electrical code. It requires 7 foot around the panels because of the voltage involved. So 7 foot is the fence height that's required around the panels, and that would be for the panels. It would be for any other equipment that's on the ground. If there was a transformer pad close to the building, it would also be 7 foot as well. So the electrical code dictates that height.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
The estimated life of the systems?
This one, I believe, is 25 years, but Ms. Brody can confirm the contract amount, but they're typically 25 years for the panels.
And then circling back with our engineer's comments for the access roads, do you take into consideration for fire apparatus with access roads?
Typically, for these smaller systems, typically not, because you're going to be close to the main road that's there already. So if they have to get there, it would just be hosed to get to, if there's a fire or something. They wouldn't want, because you're so close to the road on these, you wouldn't want to drive a fire truck right up to the facility. So we don't usually do that for these small systems. On the bigger systems, you'll see where you're in a field or on a landfill where there are 10, 15, 20 megawatts, you'll have access roads to get to various parts of the facility. But for here, you don't have that. And the electrical equipment is usually next to the building itself, so it could be serviced from that way, from a fire truck access.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
How much degradation is it in the panels?
You mean in terms of
Like
the
year
overall
over year,
efficiency?
efficiency-wise?
It depends on the panel, but I think you usually see a couple % from when you start to when you percentage points from when you start out to when you get to the end of the life of the panel.
And then each panel will have its own inverter, or is it like
No,
grouping?
What they do is it's a grouping. So depending on how the electrical engineer's calculations, they'll group a certain number of panels together to an inverter, and then that inverter will get strung back to the transformer. Okay. So there's multiple inverters as I said, for the parking lot system. Those are typically going to be mounted probably on the poles up at the top. And they're small now. A lot of them are the size of personal computers. You know, you'll see in terms of a box that'll be on there with a fan, which is quiet in terms of any noise generation. And they'll string those together till they get back to the electrical room where the transformer would be. For the ground mount ones, for the smaller systems, they might only have one or two. So they might just put it back by the electrical system by the electrical room. That'll be worked out by the electrical engineer when they do the final calculations.
Yeah. So the reason I bring that point up is that if you have a lot of inverters, if they're going down, I don't know how frequently they would go down, or if there's issues, then you'd have to keep going back and forth to service them or repair them. So I don't know if somebody can.
Typically with these systems, they don't really have much problems. Usually you'll get, what happens a lot of times is you'll get a panel or two will get damaged, and they'll come out and replace them at an appropriate time. If you lose 2 or 3 panels, it's not really an issue early on. If you have damage to multiple panels, it knocks out certain circuits, and you got to come out and do the maintenance sooner because you lose power generation. But generally speaking, it's all monitored remote. They have digital monitoring of the system, so they know how much it's generating, and they'll come out and check it if there's an issue, and they usually replace it pretty quickly.
What's the threshold? What would be the threshold that they would come out? Like, is it a certain amount of panels, certain amount of production?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that. Depends on how it's being generated. So Susan could be answer that one.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll get another witness to answer that, or try to. So.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Mrs.
If
Simon.
there's no other questions, then we're going to have Ms. Brody come on up.
Thank you.
So, Peter, if you
I was gonna say, good evening. If I could just swear you in quickly, if you could raise your right hand for me. Do you swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address for the record, please.
Yes, Susan Brody, Brodie. My address is 1 Fieldcrest Drive, Muncie, New York, 10952.
And Ms. Brody, just describe what your position and responsibilities are with regard to HESP Solar.
I'm the Chief Operations Officer at HESP Solar, so basically everything at HESP Solar is my responsibility.
And you're familiar with this solar presentation with regard to the various schools, correct?
Yes, I am.
So there were a bunch of questions that were asked. Mr. Michello answered some, I answered a few, but I took some notes. So there was a comment about access to the roof for the panels, and I talked about coordination with the fire company. Can you just maybe elaborate on that?
Yeah, so each individual site will be assessed as to what the school accommodation is to reach the roof. Many schools have direct internal access to the roof, and if the school will let, then that will be the access to the roof. Sometimes we have a situation where we have to put a ladder up against the side of the building to access the roof, in which case we do that, but usually we don't. Usually we access the roof from inside the building. That's not for people doing construction. The construction workers will always access by a lift at the side. We don't want construction crews walking through a school ever. But I'm saying for maintenance or for issues when, if there was a reason, an emergency situation where we needed to access the roof to, deal with the problem, then we would usually access the roof from the inside the building. Once construction was finished, we would remove the lift and remove the ladder, and there would be normal roof access.
And a related question, I think, that was asked regarding security, about coordination as to any existing or proposed security cameras and coordinating with the police department and any public safety.
Right. So once the design is finalized and the Board of Education approves the design, we then go down to the building department and we work with zoning, with the building department, with the fire department, and if requested with the police department, it's not a common request to involve the police department, but we'll be very happy to do that. We want everybody working together, and we want the schools to be as secure as possible. So we're happy to work with whoever you suggest and whoever the school requests. That will be Terrific. Whenever, can I just address the camera? So if there are security cameras now located on the buildings, what we do when we install the canopies is we do a study of what the cameras are covering, and then we often install cameras that will, increase the security so that wherever we would block something, we would certainly make sure a camera provided a view of that area, and we can also add more cameras to provide more view if required.
And that's in coordination with public safety and police department.
Yes,
And the school.
and the school security.
Mr. Chairman, may I? Yes. Okay. I was the one who asked the question earlier about the security. My concern is, again, here, because this is more of a courtesy review, an advisory, not an actionable review, is will the school district, in connection with this project, I know you mentioned the study, will a study actually be done? Because my concern is that although solar energy is great and it's going to be green and environmentally friendly and everything else, it still has to balance with safety of the students as well as the other visitors and employees of the schools. And just hearing, well, it'll be okay and will work, I'd like to know that there's going to be some type of formal study done to be presented, work with public safety, work with the school district to make sure that safety is not going to be sacrificed in balancing for the solar panels.
Absolutely. That's always part of every project. Once we have the design, we meet with the Board of Ed, we go through each site, we walk the site with, sometimes the principals join, usually it's the buildings and maintenance crew that walk us through, show us what all the safety features are presently, make sure we're going to accommodate and take into account everything, and make sure everything is done so that everything that was covered before is either enhanced or maintained.
Yeah, I would just like to make sure that the police department, as public safety, as well as any school security, because those are going to be the entities that are going to have the best perspective and expertise on working with you to make sure that happens, as opposed to other members, perhaps of the school board, who are elected officials, but not necessarily security experts, or principals, again, who are educators and administrators and experts in those fields. And I want to make sure, and you haven't really said it, I want to make sure that we're going to be working with school security and with the police department.
We will work with the school security and with the police department. Okay. Absolutely. Okay. Sorry if I wasn't clear.
No,
Yep.
I want to hear it and feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree.
There was a question about how the money works. In terms of, Mr. Michello, I think, did a good job explaining about net zero in terms of power in and power out. But in terms of the cost savings for the school district, just maybe give a general overview of that.
Right. So thanks, Mr. Michello. But I think the net zero that he was referring to is not about money. It's about power to the grid. So we try to design a system so that it provides as much power as the school needs without over providing power. So we look to get someplace, in the 90% range. I think on these schools, we actually were able to achieve about 98 to 99%. So what that means is that they will be provided with 99% of the energy will be coming from solar, and they will be using very little of the utility energy. And as far as the money goes, there will be savings on every kilowatt hour that they use in solar. And when we actually put together the RFP response, we estimate with a high level of certainty that the savings to the school will be almost $400,000 a year and about over $6 million for the 15-year contract life.
And that's including the costs of any lease of the 30-year lease or whatever the lease is?
No lease payment.
So there's no lease payment?
No. There's the only requirement that the school has to, the only obligation that they have to HESP Solar is to buy the power that is provided by the solar system.
And by buying that power from solar as opposed to from off the grid is going to be, as you said, approximately a $400,000 a year savings.
Correct.
Thank
Across
you.
all the schools.
Oh, sure, yes.
Yeah.
How many of these things have you done?
Very many. Very
No,
many.
Yeah,
we
like
built
to-
just, yeah.
No.
I would say we built probably about 600 projects across New Jersey. Most of those are for boards of education and municipalities. By projects, I mean sites, each school building. And then we have installations in Massachusetts, in Maryland, in DC, in Connecticut, and New York as well.
Will you provide some sites in your submission so that we could call and say, how's it going? What do you think?
Sure, that would be great. We're actually building not far from here right now. We are almost starting construction on a landfill project for the Howell Township. So, and that's going to be a very large project. It will actually be our largest project, which is going to be providing the Township of Howell with a very large lease payment because they can't benefit the use of the power the way that the schools can. So they're leasing us the landfill. We're building a large project there that will feed the grid. So that's good for everybody. The grid will benefit more energy, and the township is going to benefit a large lease payment on a landfill where they could never make any money. So we'll be happy to give you references. Lots of them are local. You can drive by and see how the canopies look. We can send you references for some ground mounts, some rooftops and canopies so you can see what all the systems look like.
Thank
Sure,
you.
That's a good idea.
And Susan, I think there was also a question, although Mr. Michello, I think, answered it, about the lifespan of the panels, and I believe he said 25 years.
Right. So the contract with the school is for 15 years because that's New Jersey state law that the school can't go out for more than 15 years on a service contract. Most schools do look to extend the contract, which they're allowed to. I think up to 3 times they're allowed to ask for up to 3 5-year extensions on a service contract. So, but the contract that we have with the Board of Education clearly calls for their right to exit the contract after 15 years in one of 3 ways. Either they can ask us to remove all the systems at our own cost, or they can ask to extend the contract, or they can ask us to buy out the systems so that they can benefit free electricity because they'll just, they won't have to pay us for it if they own the systems, and they would have the right to buy those systems at fair market value, which we would think today that in 15 years, the fair market value on 15-year-old solar systems will be, very affordable for boards of education. The life expectancy of a solar panel is about 40 years. The 25 years that Mr. Michello was referencing is that they're warranted for 25 years, but we expect them to outlive the warranty. So the systems will be good for a long time.
I think that covered the questions that we asked to defer to Ms. Brody.
Sure. Anybody else on the board wish to?
So does that 40-year cover, the degradation is the 2% or whatever we mentioned, is up to the 40 years, or is it?
I never like to correct any of my reps, but the degradation is really about 0.5% a year.
0.5%?
0.5% per year. So over the life of the system, it does degrade by several percentage points, but it will take the systems from providing 99% of the power to 97 or 96% of the power required by the schools. And that would continue past the 15 years too.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think that, unless there's any other questions, that concludes our presentation. Again, we do believe that the project is consistent with the master plan. There's, many references to support for solar projects such as this one, and we are proud to be part of, helping the school district and saving it a boatload of money.
Thank you. Sure. Is there anybody else from the board that have any comments? Anybody from the public wish to be heard? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, you take them.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Sachs, you're up.
Thank you.
Let me just announce the application. It's PB 1263-24303 Spotswood Englishtown Road LLC.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, board professionals. Lawrence Sachs on behalf of the applicant, John Marullo. This property is located at 302 Spotswood Englishtown Road, known as Block 152, Lot 1. We're here this evening for a minor site plan. Essentially, what we would like to do is we're looking to redelineate an existing parking lot for a retail building that's been there for quite some time, and there are some associated site improvements with that. Many of you may recall that the building was a florist at one point. It's been vacant for quite some time. My client did a number of interior renovations to the building, also put a new facade up. However, the parking lot was deemed and was in need of repair and some attention, and that's what we're here for tonight with respect to this minor site plan. We presently don't have a tenant for this building, so I can't really respond to a lot of the questions regarding operations for a potential tenant. But what I can tell the board is that the property is located in a neighborhood commercial zone. Any tenant that goes in there will be a tenant who is permitted in that neighborhood commercial zone. If they're not, they'll have to come back in front of the zoning board for a use variance, I would assume. But any tenant will comply with the requirements of the NC zone. And in terms of parking, and my expert witness will get into this, we looked at the parking requirements using the strictest standards for general retail use. And based upon that, we have adequate parking. We don't need a parking variance. There are a number of pre-existing nonconformities with respect to this property. They're for minimum lot area, minimum lot frontage, minimum lot width, minimum lot depth, minimum front yard setback, minimum side yard setback, minimum combined side yard setback, minimum rear yard setback, maximum gross floor area, maximum building coverage, maximum lot coverage, and minimum buffer width requirements. However, we're not aggravating any of them. They're all pre-existing nonconformities. We're not expanding the building. So we really are simply here for a minor site plan. We'll address some of the nonconformities, but we're here for really for a minor site plan. I do have one witness, Ms. Lorelei Totten, who will provide a detail as to what's involved here. She's a licensed professional engineer and also a licensed planner. So, Mr. Vignola, if you want to swear her in, that would be fine.
Happy to. Do you swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address for the record, please.
Yes, Lorelei Totten, T as in Tom, O-T-T-E-N, Crest Engineering Associates, Millstone Township, New Jersey, 100 Wright Drive.
And you've been before this board several
Yes,
times before,
I have
and you've
been.
been approved each time.
As both an engineer and a planner, my planning license is 1983 and in good, 86, and in
Thank-
good standing, and my license is 83. and
Thank
good
you.
standing.
You're accepted.
Thank you.
I can verify. I've seen her before.
Yes.
I just wanted to put it on the record.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Totten, if you can briefly describe the site, what's being proposed, and then eventually we'll get into some of the recommendations from staff.
Yes, the site is known as Lot 1, Block 152. As noted, it's two...
Can you pull the microphone over?
Sorry. Guess I wasn't using my planning board voice. That's what I tell my colleagues at work when I can't hear them.
Now you sound like you.
Yes, thank you, thank you. It's, as mentioned, it's 302 Spotswood Englishtown Road. It's adjacent to Harrison Street on the, I guess that would be the west side. There's a single-family barber shop to the right, another street, and then behind it is the building where the District Number 1 used to be until they built their new home on the corner of Texas Road and one of those other roads with double names that I can't think of. Sorry. It is a 8,247 square foot lot, which is less than a quarter acre, in a 40-acre zone. As noted, it has a 1,440 square foot building, which is smaller than some of the houses in Monroe Township, footprint-wise. And most of the surface is paved. There's a little bit of grass along the eastern edge of the property, but other than that, it's pretty much paved parking lot to parking lot. Property line to property line. So it's around 97.7% coverage right now. The two items that do not need variances are the building coverage, 17.7, and the FAR at 0.18, which meet the requirements. So that shows you it's not too intensive a use for this lot. Has existing utilities, no floodplains, no wetlands. The neighborhood commercial zone is where it is located. It was confirmed that some years ago the split zone was removed. It used to be half residential and half commercial, and now it's all commercial. There are, as mentioned, a slew of bulk variances, just about every bulk variance you can imagine, that are required, exist, and are required to accommodate the property on this site. So, as noted,
And Ms. Totten, these plans were submitted as part of the application
yes,
submission?
yes, they were. As noted, the intent is to organize this. So, in the middle, dominating the property is the rectangle that it has the building. There is a depressed curb about a little less than 1/2 from the right side of the property to allow access to the parking area that goes all the way around the site. Harrison Street on the left has no delineation between Harrison Street and the parking lot. So what we're proposing to do, and this took a lot of thought and work with your professionals, is to restrict this circulation to one way through the site. Right now, you can actually turn from Spotswood Englishtown Road right into the site. Oop, come on, I guess my battery went out. Right into the site. I'm going to go up because I do better pointing. Right into the site from right into there, which is a very close to the road and not really a safe condition. So we are proposing to remove the pavement in that area and in a bigger chunk of green, where, should you approve this, we would submit a landscape plan to show you what kind of shrubs we can, and perhaps trees, depending on the site triangle issues, we can plant in that to bring a little bit of green to this corner. And if you've looked at the planning letter, there's a picture of the front of the building, and you can see it looks somewhat bare. So this would be a nice aesthetic feature to the corner. So additionally, it needs 10 parking spaces, 1 handicap accessible space, and a place to put our trash containers. So that was a kind of a challenge. So what we did was we utilized parallel parking across the back, and a parallel space with a dumpster enclosure or trash enclosure located a foot off of the right property line, which is a variance. But due to the size of the property, there's not that many good spots, and it is going to enclose the trash enclosures, which there's no enclosure for trash cans there now. So this will help make the site look neater and cleaner, I believe. So and our parking spaces are 8 foot wide where, I mean, the parallel, 8 foot wide where 9 foot is required because we need the room for a 20-foot aisle, which is a little undersized too, but for one-way traffic, you can negotiate for one-way traffic. We do, the most difficult thing was trying to get a handicap space close to the front doors that worked. And so we ended up providing a space right in front and then leaving it, and then you have to back out of it. If you pull in, you have to back out. So you pull in, and then how do you back out? Well, you have to go around. And so we are striping off a space to allow this handicap space, which is sized for van accessibility, to work, and next to it a parking space. And of course, parking's not allowed in the front yard. But we're trying to maximize the parking on this site. So that's why we're also only providing 18-foot deep, 9-foot wide spaces for the standard spaces, particularly across where they will back out onto Harrison, which is not something that you normally want. But Harrison is a very small street, and we're trying to maximize parking. And there are other areas in this area of Monroe where these small streets where people back out onto these small side streets. So I don't think that safety is a terrible issue here. And we are making safety better by taking the pavement away from this one corner and not allowing vehicles to come in. I had thought of that at one point for this space. It's just too close to Spotswood Englishtown Road. So with that being said, we are reducing the impervious cover on the site by a little bit. We are improving the circulation, even though we need variances for parking space size, aisle size, as well as parking in the front yard. And we don't really have a spot for loading. But this is a very small building, 1440 square feet, so the type of business that could comfortably work in this building will not be large either, and they will get, UPS and that size trucks as a most part, and those can park in one of the parking spaces. One of the requests from the planning letter is to provide an EV space. I didn't even think about this. This is great, because when you provide an EV space, you get 2 spaces for the price of 1. So now we have 11 spaces if we designate space 10 as an EV make-ready space, and we're over by 1. Of course, practically we're not, but we are in purposes of counting parking spaces. So we would propose to make number 10 a make-ready because it's close to the building to allow electricity, and I think they make EV charging stations you can mount on the wall, which would be good for this spot. Let's see, I think I covered, just look at my notes to make sure that I covered everything. Talked about the trash and, so access for the trash removal. That's not easy either. It's a small site. We only have 20-foot aisles. So what we would propose is there's a lot of residential along here. The people will just be putting their trash cans out, and they'll be picked up by the public system. This would be private haulers, but we propose to do the same thing. It'll be organized. The owner will know when they're coming. We'll put them out, and they'll be taken away. And it's trash cans, not a dumpster. So maybe large ones, but on wheels that can be rolled down to the corner. So that's what we would propose for trash removal. Middlesex County Planning Board. Middlesex County owns the road. So we will, should you approve this, we'll go before that board and abide by the requirements they have for whatever requirements they have for curb and sidewalk. There already is curb and sidewalk here. Generally speaking, these days, I believe this right-of-way that's shown is going to be sufficient because they usually just say, put the right-of-way 3 feet behind the existing sidewalk these days. I forgot to say that there is no curb on Harrison, so we're going to put depressed curb to delineate the edge of the property and the end of the parking spaces so that everybody will know where it is, and connect it into the, the existing curb comes up, so we're going to put in a nice smooth curve down to the main road. Let's see. I think there is an existing site triangle easement. If you looked at the existing conditions plan that crosses right through the middle of the property, that site triangle is dedicated to Middlesex County, and one of our goals would be that's an old-fashioned site triangle where they just said, go up 100 feet up the road and 300 feet up this way and connect the dots. Now you use the AASHTO requirements, which are shown on here, where you come up 14 feet off the traveled way and you go down 350 or so, depending on the speed. So as you can see from this dark line, the line of sight is not even in the property at all. So I believe that we will not have a difficult time with Middlesex County in changing over that particular easement. Let's see.
Ms. Totten, just to summarize a couple things before, I just want to ask you a couple planning questions.
Sure.
But in terms of the engineering on this, so really the highlights of this site right now, there's really no delineation of parking on this site.
Correct.
Okay, so we're obviously going to provide clear delineation of parking. We're eliminating that parking area that exists at the corner of Harrison and Spotswood English Town Road. And in fact, if that was in the site triangle, that's being eliminated. So certainly that's an improvement. We're adding some green space in that area, so we're reducing the impervious coverage. You're putting one-way circulation here, which obviously is much more organized, and we're providing a dumpster enclosure and a procedure for trash pickup. So is that more or less a summary of the improvements that we're proposing here?
Very succinct.
Okay. And in terms of planning, I know you covered really, right, we needed variances as pre-existing nonconformities for just about everything based on the size of this site. We're not aggravating any of them. The one variance that we are triggering, though, I guess, is the trash enclosure.
Yes.
However, we don't have a trash enclosure there now.
Correct.
So what we're doing is we're providing a trash enclosure. In your professional opinion as a planner in this license in the state of New Jersey, does that benefit outweigh any detriments to the surrounding area, zone plan, zoning ordinance, master plan? And does it fit within your parameters of what would be a C2, flexible C2 variance?
Yes, this is partially hardship and C2, and we've taken a lot of pains to come up with a creative solution to maximize the parking while still providing reasonable parking space sizes and clean up the site and organize it. So I think the benefits of all of that outweigh any detriments to all of the variances, both for the parking, the buffers, which were called out because it's next to residential zone, and the bulk variances outweigh all those detriments, which in my opinion, I believe you can grant these variances without any detriment to the public good and welfare.
And it promotes sound planning as one of the requirements under a C2?
Yes, it does promote sound planning.
And just lastly, in terms of parking, so we have 10 parking spaces. If we put the EV charger in, we pick up an additional parking, an additional credit. I know you looked at the most stringent requirements, which would be general retail, which would be 1 per 150 square feet.
Yes.
So if we have less than 1,500 square feet, we only need 10 parking spaces. So we don't require a parking variance.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything further. Certainly, Ms. Taunton's available for any board questions. Hopefully, we've covered the staff reports, but certainly she's available for any questioning.
Thank you.
I just hold. All right. Thank you, Ms. Toten. I want to start with. First, the easier questions. There's no signage that was proposed with this application. I'm assuming because you don't have a tenant, you're not proposing. So to clarify on record, that will be part of a zoning permit application
Yes.
when you have a tenant? Okay.
Yes.
couple of times we've heard tonight saying that most of these are pre-existing nonconformities, but I do want to clarify. I mean, the parking is being proposed, the parking size, parking location, that's why the buffer and everything that's required is a variance. Those are not pre-existing nonconformities.
That's correct. Just the bulks, most of the bulks.
Most of the bulks, yes. And in that also, I think your impervious coverage technically is a new variance, even though you've gone down from 100% to a 97.7%, right?
Okay.
Yes, we would agree with that.
All right. I know we wanted to just clarify it's 97.7% and not 95% as we saw somewhere else in the site plan.
Yes, I think the notes were old.
Okay.
And hadn't been, and we clarified it by more careful calculation. I did not calculate how much it goes down by, though.
Okay. We also made a request on how will the lighting around this parking lot be provided? Will it be building mounted, or are we doing something for lighting?
I think it would be building mounted, and I think along Spotswood there might be a utility pole with some lighting. But should you approve this, we would clarify the lighting.
Okay, and should the board approve this, I would request that, a lighting plan with the illumination standards be provided. Now, going back to the couple of things, you did talk about was that the side triangle deed known as the exception deed along the sidewalk and portion?
Yes.
Okay, and that's what you're going to get clarified from the county and removed possibly?
Yes.
Okay. The dumpster enclosure, because the detail had a 10 by 12, but the site plan says it's going to be 8 by 9.
Yes, we had a larger one.
Okay.
But then when we rearranged everything, I made it smaller and neglected to revise the detail.
Okay, and that would be sufficient for any type of business in your mind that would come in this 40 square foot building?
Yes.
Okay. Now, going back to, again, the testimony was made that the site has several of these nonconformities because of the building placement as well as, the parking that's being provided. We also heard the testimony that, most of the uses would be what's permitted in the neighborhood commercial zone. Given that, the impervious coverage is not met and parking is just about fitting, wouldn't it be one of the asks of the board, so as to say, that to look at the type of uses that would restrict even, requiring that much of parking? And the reason I'm saying that is because at some point, I believe, discussion was that this might be a by appointment hair care salon or something like that, which I think has more lesser standards. I think it's per chair, 1 space or 2 space. So keeping that in mind, is that more of a better ask than, providing as much parking on the site and increasing the impervious coverage and all? Again, I understand all these are permitted, but again, the site is small. So shouldn't the uses also be something that's, would more fittingly fit on the site?
The only thing I can respond to that is that I think the size of the building will generate what can go in there. I mean, a 1,440 square foot building is a rather small building for any commercial business, quite frankly. So I think the market will drive what use goes in there. But what I think I said at the outset, and I'll repeat it again, is that obviously you'll have a tenancy review in Monroe Township. So whatever business comes in here, we'll certainly provide a floor plan if it's necessary. If it is a salon, we'll show you how many chairs would be there. If it's another use, obviously, we got to make sure that we have enough parking. So, we'll obviously comply with what the standards are with respect to parking for any type of use. I don't know if I could envision, if I could restrict it to a use right now, because I don't know what uses I could restrict. But I will tell you this, it's going to be a neighborhood commercial use, and that's going to be driven by the fact that it's such a small building.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They went through my May 9th, 2025 review letter, and I believe you agreed on the record to meet all the comments
Yeah, I don't,
as we discussed.
I
or
think
as
we
we're-
did. Yeah, I think the only issue, Mark, and I think we covered it is, and I think the revised plan showed it, we're going to put a depressed curb on Harrison. We'll deal with the county on whatever other improvements are required. Yeah, but I think we can comply with everything that's in your.
So the one thing on Harrison, the ordinance requires the curb and sidewalk, so if you're looking for relief on the sidewalk, and you're agreeable to provide the contribution for the sidewalk on Harrison?
I think we're going to have to, yes.
Thank you. You've reduced some of the impervious, but frankly, just looking at it here tonight, there's an area next to the handicap spot, between the handicap spot and Spotswood English Town Road. That pavement, can that be expanded to be part of the landscaped area? I think it'll help guide someone pulling out of that parking stall to not want to back up a little bit and pull forward and make a sharp left onto Spotswood English Town Road over the curb.
We could look at that. I would like to talk with my landscape architect to make sure that something would grow there. But
Yeah.
I think we could.
Yeah, and I
expand
think,
it.
yeah, I mean, I understand the point about delineation, so, yeah. And
Yeah, it's an area, it's just asphalt and, it's not a walkway, it's not a parking area, it's not an aisle, so it looks like a good area to expand some of that landscape area and reduce the impervious. As far as the plan, I've met with Lorelei on this a couple of times. We went through the plan. We made some revisions. It's my second review letter. So it's certainly been reduced from the first review letter, and it's a much better plan than when we first sat down. My comment.
Any questions from the board?
Just a couple of quick things. Excuse me.
Sure.
First, I'd just like to say, in general, it's always nice to see an application where the applicant is reviving a property and improving it. And in here, we see reworking of the parking and circulation and so forth. And that's always a good starting point. So I appreciate that. I do have a couple of questions. One first for our attorney, just to clarify. I want to make sure, because if they don't need a parking variance, the spaces are sufficient. And I think there was comments somewhere crossed before about variances for the other items, but would those be waivers or variances, just for the board?
Which other items?
The size of the spaces and things of that nature.
Typically, the size of the space is variance.
Is it okay? That's what I wanted to make sure. And the other question I had was for the applicant, with regard to loading. I know there were two things. I mean, Ms. Totten had said earlier during the course of her testimony that this is not too intensive a use for the lot, but yet we don't know what the use is going to be beyond that, what it's zoned for. And putting that in conjunction with loading, again, the typical, a box truck, a UPS truck, is the applicant going to, I mean, we don't know what the tenant is going to be. I just don't want to envision an 18-wheeler pulling in there for the sake of loading an unknown tenant, which could be a permissible tenant use-wise.
Yeah, let me respond. We would agree, we could agree, and we will agree that no tractor-trailer deliveries. Quite frankly, I don't think a tractor-trailer could navigate that site even.
I just wouldn't want to see someone try.
Right. But we could agree
or like waiting in the street and blocking traffic, things of that nature.
I mean, it's not that size building will not generate tractor-trailer deliveries, but we certainly have no problem with the restriction on that. I would imagine the deliveries are going to be box truck, UPS, and a van, whatever use we end up having there. And I don't think we require a loading zone for that. Certainly, if there's going to be deliveries, we'll also agree that they would be off hours, so that there would be no conflict with parking.
Okay. Thank you.
Minor comment. Since I live in the Mill Lake area, I am very happy. It's got to be more than a decade since that florist went out of business, and it's just been an abandoned building. And I've noticed they've cleaned it up, which is very good. Now, about a rumor. Apparently, I'm not on Facebook, but my wife is on Facebook. Taco Bell?
Yeah.
Okay, let's make sure. I don't want to. I like Taco Bell, but that's not the place for it.
No. Plus, they need a drive-through, and I don't have enough room for a drive-through.
But I think it'll be very good for whatever the service organization, whether it's not a florist, but a barbershop, a hairdresser, whatever the supply is that they're looking at, that would be very welcomed, and I think it would add to it. The only other item just to mention, Harrison Avenue leads to, is it the Woodland School? So whatever also be concerned is there will be kids running up and down there, not necessarily looking at traffic, so another concern. Other than that, I'm glad to see it'll not be an unused building.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just Mr. Rothman's comment, there will be a tenancy review, so the zoning officer will review the uses that would be proposed when they do have a tenant, and as well as the parking requirements. So, and it needs to be a permitted use in that zone.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I had a sort of a follow-up question to that. So that Harrison goes up into Mill Lake, not Mill Lake, the school. So that parking spot 1, it's a parallel. So how do you back up? Do you have to go on the road to back up into that spot? Or there's a car in parking lot 2 and you want to park in 1, do you have to back up from Harrison or?
Well, no, it's a one-way circulation, so, yeah.
If there's a car in 2, you still have to back up into the second spot, right?
Well, there's enough, Lorelei, is there enough room for a vehicle without having to back up to navigate out of that spot?
Well, with a parallel space, you do have to pull up
gotta pull
a little
up.
past it and then back into it. So it's possible that they might come up to the edge of the curb, the proposed curb that we're proposing to get into the space.
Is it possible, I don't know if this is even possible, to that 4th spot, move it further back, or you need that? I don't know, that's maybe more of a,
So the reason why it's a little bit off the property line is because you do need to maneuver back and forth a little bit. We do have
I was
the
just thinking about
ability
the
to
safety with the
remove one
kids.
space if that's a super concern, right, and still meet the parking requirement.
I prefer not to lose any parking,
Right.
if we don't have to on a site like this, but,
One thing I may add, Mr. Patel, is the parallel parking spaces are about 23 feet, right? Or 22?
Correct,
Yeah,
23.
feet. So they're a little longer
All right.
than a typical 9x18 space that
okay,
would
yeah,
be
that
here.
extra 2 feet.
Yeah.
That makes a
helps.
difference.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
thank you, Megan.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mrs. Sachs, any other witnesses?
I have no other witnesses, Mr. Chairman. Certainly, if any member of the public wants to
Right.
comment, that would be fine.
I'm going to open up to the public. If anyone wants to be heard, they can come forward. Come up.
And before you start, I'm just going to swear you in quickly, so if you make any comments, in addition to any questions you might have. So if you could just raise your right hand for me. Do you swear any testimony you provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address, please.
Yeah, my name is Renata Paradis,
Can you speak up?
P-A-R-A-D-Y-S-E.
Could you speak into the mic? Thank you.
My name is Renata Paradis, last name P-A-R-A-D-Y-S-Z. And I'm actually owner of the house next to the property, 300 Spotswood English Town Road. And I own the house and the small hair salon. So I've got the question because I could see that the dumpster, it's gonna be right here.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a good idea because that's actually it's my backyard. So I don't want to swimming and smell there. You know. If there is any any other place that we can actually put the dumpsters somewhere else?
Well, I don't know if Lorelei, is there any accommodation we can make? I mean, that's really the only space that we could put it in without losing any parking.
Yeah.
I will tell you this, it will be a dumpster enclosure, so it'll be enclosed. We will ensure that any trash that's put in there, any recycling that's put in there, there'll be a lid on top of the enclosure.
Okay.
So it will not be open, it will not be open to the air.
Yeah, but still, I don't know if that's a good idea. And then, winter time, it's different. But, summertime, when it's really, really hot, the smell, it's actually, and then there is other activities like mice, rats. So I don't know if I would like to have that just close to my pool. And then another question, if there is a hair salon, the township allows to next building another hair salon? Because that would be a problem too, because I know that you don't still have a tenants, right? Yeah, but that for me will be a problem if another hair salon will be that close to me. So.
Just say, I don't know of any, that's just a market, the market will drive whether or not.
Township doesn't have any requirements?
No, there's no space requirement. I mean, frequently you'll see a bunch of gas stations all across intersections from each other. It's just, I can appreciate that, but unfortunately there's no regulation that stops two of the same business type going in next to each other.
I've been advised by my client that it will not be a hair salon.
Okay.
So, okay.
And please, if you can find some other place for the garbage, that would be.
That is, I could see where that would be an ongoing problem. If there's something that could be done or in a follow-up review where we could find another location, so she doesn't wake up each morning to smell what was dropped before, that'd be great.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the applicant, can the dumpster be moved against the building on that side? It'd still be on that side, but it'd be further away from the property line.
We could look at that. Then the space would need to move as well. And maybe in this circulation, if we put the parking space in front and the dumpster behind, I would be happy to work with Mr. Rasmowitz to see if we can move it away. You're welcome.
That would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman? Just to follow up with regard to the trash enclosure, I realize there's been no tenant and we've had no testimony basically about operations, but do we know who is going to be responsible for arranging for trash pickup? Is that going to be a tenant or the landlord?
It's going to be the property owner.
It's going to be the property owner. So would the property owner be willing to kind of maybe consent to some type of schedule of like once a week, twice a week? When is trash going to be picked up? And then if it's going to be even allayed to a tenant, then it's going to have to be a condition in a lease to make sure. So at least the member of the public knows, all right, they're coming so many times a week. It's not going to be random if we can.
No, it won't be random because as I've indicated at the outset, we'll make sure that occurs, during off-peak hours, when the business is not being operated. The property owner will be responsible for the trash removal. And I think in terms of tenancy review, having dealt with Monroe, they're going to, whatever prospective tenant comes in, we're going to have to provide a detail as to how that's going to operate. So there's obviously oversight from the municipality as well.
Thank you.
Just going back to the dumpster again. Is it going to be a dumpster or is it going to be garbage cans? I heard dumpster, I heard garbage cans, I heard it got smaller, doesn't fit a dumpster. What is it?
I know it's a habit because almost every site plan has a dumpster enclosure, but it is an enclosure and it will contain trash cans that can be moved by a person to pull out.
and can also investigate how big the cans are and maybe adjust the size to fit the cans.
So to be similar to the residential garbage cans, the big green
Yes.
cans that they wheel out, and the tenant or the owner will be wheeling them out weekly as the garbage gets picked up.
Correct.
Okay.
And also I know that in the beginning of a new project like this, you don't always know how often. So maybe you start out once a week, and if it turns out that the trash needs to be picked up twice a week, or maybe it's the recycling is much more, and the recycling gets picked up twice a week. So it's until it makes sense.
Okay. So you just, so the residents aware, it's not a site that's going to have any kind of dumpster where a garbage truck's got to pull in there in the middle of the night and dump it or anything. It's
Correct.
similar to the residential garbage pickup. So that helps, with a smaller dumpster, and, I'm sure we can move it away from the property line, to accommodate the neighbor, and, I can work with the applicant's engineer on that through resolution compliance review. I'm comfortable with that.
What's that?
Your chair squeaking.
I'm sorry.
Is that your chair squeaking?
That is probably my chair squeaking.
Keep recording my.
It's not me.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else from the public wish to be heard? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public portion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Public portion's closed on this application. Is there any further discussion from the board? As I understand this application, there's a number of conditions that have been discussed here. One is contribution for payment of the sidewalk on Harrison Street. Another I heard was no hair salon.
Well, we're not planning on putting a hair salon in, but,
Can we put that in on our motion as a condition?
well, I don't know if I want to restrict free trade, so to speak. But my client has indicated that he has not had any discussions with a hair salon. But to Mr. Vignola's point, yes, if we get a hair salon there, I don't think there's, we can
The
stop.
answer is no hair salon unless we get a hair salon?
Correct.
Okay.
But that's not what we're seeking.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we had that right.
So the application then is really limited to what we've discussed here in terms of the variances plus contribution and payment
Yes.
towards the sidewalk.
Yes.
And that you're going to look into whether it's feasible to move the dumpster.
Let's dumpster, right. Trash enclosure instead of dumpster. But yes, we're going to look to see if we can put that against the building with parking space number 5.
And I think there was also the adding pervious coverage next to the ADA spot in the front of the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does anybody want to articulate that into a motion?
Well, I will as soon as I ask Mark or Ms. Apter, which would be better, a preliminary or a final at this point?
Chairman, this is a minor site plan, so there is no preliminary or end final. It's
Okay.
a minor, so it's all done in one vote.
That takes away my options. Okay. I'll move to approve this application.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Rothman?
Yes.
Ms. Brodsky?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Mr. Slavicek?
Yes.
Mr. Weiner?
Yes.
Councilwoman Cohen?
Yes.
Chairman Gaffrey?
Yes. Okay, it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Sacks.
you.
Thank you.
A preliminary, but okay. Okay.
When you're not here. You're an attorney.
No.
I thought so. I wasn't sure.
So what do
Okay.
you-
Moving along on the agenda, under memorialization, there's no resolutions to be adopted.
I'll do that too.
Is there anybody from the public that wishes to be heard on any other topic?
By the way,
Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public portion? Second, okay, public portion. Any discussion items?
Masters in addiction.
Hearing none,
And I'm now.
I see no correspondence,
Looking for a job.
so we move on to, is there a motion to adjourn?
Somewhere. Some check.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Please do. On my pharmaceutical day.